Welcome to the Ezra Digital 2020 Education Series. I would now like to turn over the program to Steve Bisbee for introductions.
Thank you, Mallory. I'm Steve Bisbee. I'm the president and founder of eOriginal, a leading provider of digital transaction management solutions, primarily for financial services. I oversaw the creation and delivery of unique digital technologies that replace paper processes, expedite transactions, and create business process efficiencies for over 600 clients within a digital financial ecosystem. The Electronic Signature and Records Association was formed long ago to educate and advocate for the use and acceptance of digital signatures, records, and transactions. I've been on the Ezra board since its inception. I'm here today with my colleague, Margot Tank, a partner at DLA Piper, and the U.S. co-chair of the firm's financial services sector. She's been helping companies with digital transformation for over 20 years and has advised clients on over 1,000 processes and platforms that enable digital transactions and digital payments, including the financial services, commercial, retail, commerce, and healthcare spaces. Margot is counsel to Ezra and an ex officio member of the board. Margot and I are the co-chairs of Ezra's Digital 2020 Education Series, which you have joined today. Margot?
Thank you, Steve. Ezra members are dedicated to providing, promoting, and participating in Ezra values, which are expertise, leadership, collaboration, accessibility, and technology neutrality. As part of Ezra's educational mission, we have created this webinar series to provide insights and practical guidance on business technology and legal implementation issues across a wide spectrum of electronic platform applications. Although eSign was enacted 20 years ago, there is still a learning curve as companies continue to transform their business practices and continue to take on even more critical importance in this time of social distancing, remote work, contactless consumer engagement. We hope that you will find these webinars useful.
And finally, we'd like to introduce our speakers today. Dave Brinkman from AssureSign and Laura Goodman from Junior Achievement USA. AssureSign's mission is to simplify the world's most powerful action, the signature. This declaration of agreement is the axis of trust that propels business engagements around the globe. David has been an entrepreneur in the technology space since 1985, having served as a computer programmer for health technologies and a project manager at Virtual Technologies. Before co-founding AssureSign, David formed two sister companies, Marketing Systems Group, Inc. and Third Party Verification, Inc. Under his leadership as Chief Executive Officer of both companies, they have grown exponentially since their inception. Building on the highly successful track record of these two companies, David co-founded AssureSign, LLC, in January of 2008. To launch this latest corporate venture, he has been involved in the development of some of the most innovative applications available in the electronic signature software industry and has been an active member, including a board member, at Ezra. Laura Goodman is the Vice President of Volunteer Engagement at Junior Achievement USA, where she joined the National Office staff as Director of Field Training in 2011. In the role of VP of Volunteer Engagement, Laura works cross-functionally with all the teams at the National Office on initiatives tied to the JA USA strategic plan and the overall role of the volunteer. Specifically, Laura works with JA USA education team to continually evolve the role of the volunteer in the JA programs and experiences, develops the tools that will enhance the JA experience for volunteers at both a national and local levels, and creates resources that will support JA areas in enhancing volunteer engagement at a local level. Laura also oversees the current national volunteer partnerships and identifies opportunities for new national relationships that ultimately drive additional resources to the local JA areas. Please welcome David and Laura.
Thanks, Steve. Laura, thanks for being with us today. I really am looking forward to our little chat about JA and your use of technology to really enable your customers and students and volunteers to enact or to communicate with JA. So before we get started, just to give everybody an idea of the agenda. So we'll give a quick overview of AssureSign, Junior Achievement, or JA, their overview, which is quite interesting. We'll talk about some of the differentiators that JA found when they looked at AssureSign, and we'll specifically drill into the use case, and then we'll bring some time and dollars to the conversation around what JA saw when they implemented. So real quickly, we'll go through the AssureSign overview. As Steve mentioned, I'm somewhat of a serial entrepreneur, and AssureSign is being founded in 2008. Really was the path was laid with the previous company, 3PV, or third-party verification, specifically built in 2000 without really any idea of what the eSign rules and laws were around that time, but it was built around the FCC's requirement for an independent third party to record a transaction between a buyer and a seller. We were very successful and innovative in that process. In 2005, we ran into a little startup company out of New Jersey called Vonage, and Vonage was a different kind of phone company. They were dealing with customers that were online, and so an online customer interacts differently. And what we found was that we had technologies and processes that were built in our current platform, but also extended what we called our electronic letter of agency, the ability for you to authorize the phone company to move your phone number. And we helped Vonage in that time. They were growing at about 100,000 customers per month, so they just were deluged with the fax process of print, sign, and fax back. That we saw a real path forward in 2007, as Steve mentioned. We started AssureSign. We became very quickly entrenched with Ezra, as in the beginning we were all fighting the same dragons, and still are to a great degree, although they're different dragons today, but around adoption, around acceptance, and the legality of e-signature. And one of Ezra's achievements, kind of a fun little fact, is there actually is a National eSign Day that we worked to get passed into law. In 2015, AssureSign acquired its predecessor, and we brought into the platform the ability to have a verbal signature, or a eSign via recording. So that's the AssureSign story. What I really think that you'll be interested in is hearing the junior achievement story. So Laura, I'm going to let you tell a little bit about that.
All right, thanks, Dave. So good to be with everyone today, representing Junior Achievement USA. So Junior Achievement USA is the world's largest organization dedicated to giving young people the knowledge and skills they need to own their economic success, plan for their future, and make smart academic and economic choices. JA programs are delivered by corporate and community volunteers and provide relevant hands-on experiences that give students from kindergarten through high school the knowledge and skills they need in financial literacy, work readiness, and entrepreneurship. Today, JA reaches nearly 4.8 million students a year in 105 local markets that we call our JA areas across the United States. We have an additional 5.2 million students that we serve by operations in 100 other countries, as we are a member of JA Worldwide. We're headquartered in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I am one of our many remote associates, aside from COVID. And most people remember us from our first program, which was the JA Company program, which Dave is actually an alumni of. He was a JA Company student just a couple of years ago. So that's what a lot of folks remember us as, designing coat hangers or building candle holders and going door to door and selling them. And how that program has evolved now to see some really spectacular young entrepreneurs within our system. So glad to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. We were talking a little bit before the webinar started. How many students has JA touched through its 100 years?
Yeah, so we're at or probably a little over the 100 million mark. Again, working with Junior Achievement Worldwide, we've really tried to focus on the last several years on our alumni efforts. So really re-engaging alumni who have really wonderful stories to tell. One of our probably most impressive stats is that based on our alumni research, 1 in 5 of our JA alumni say that they currently work in or have worked in the same career field as their volunteer. So there's really a lot of powerful stories about there that really drive home the value of the volunteer, which is really JA's key differentiator when you look at us compared to other nonprofits who do what we do.
So just real quickly, and this I just thought of it, but if any of our listeners out there are wanting to get their kids involved in JA, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so you can always go to our website, which is www.ja.org, or my information I think will be up later, and you're welcome to email me and I'll make the connections. Great,
yeah, thanks. And I suppose I'll be hearing from you about the alumni volunteers, but anyhow, great story, great organization, impacted and touched a lot of lives. So we'll talk about some of the differentiators and how they were actually deployed in your solution. But from an AssureSign perspective, we do support white labeling, and in many ways, white labeling means branding, but we also support deep white labeling, so that our solutions are actually behind others' solutions that you don't know that we're even there. We have prided ourselves on a extremely high level of customer success, customer service. The way we license our products, we look at unlimited users, so you don't necessarily have to buy a user for everybody in your organization. You can buy a tranche of transactions that are spread through the entire organization. What we'll be talking about today is our eSign via text feature, and what that means and how that can change the way that you're interacting with your signers, the people that you're trying to engage with. And then around that, specifically the TCPA, which is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and why that's important. And so we'll touch on that a little bit as well. Some of the AssureSign solutions we've already talked about, but signing anywhere on any device, and payments person and via voice. So with that, I'm not going to take a whole lot of our time here, but so from the junior achievement use case, tell me a little bit about what the use case was before you looked at AssureSign and what some of the pain points were.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting for us because we certainly had our first use case, which I'll talk about here in just a second, and then we've evolved into a whole other use case now with COVID. But essentially, our journey into this world started as a recommendation by our legal team. Because we're a nonprofit that works with students, again, kindergarten through 12th grade, it is our priority to ensure that we're protecting students, that we're exposing them to positive adult role models who will provide safe and productive and wonderful experiences. But we also want to protect our volunteers, right, who are going into classrooms and teaching programs. So historically, our volunteers have and continue to fill out paperwork prior to their experience, right? So things like a code of conduct standards, now a digital media policy, now in the virtual world, a media release. There's a whole host of paperwork that is required before you can teach a junior achievement program. And so pre-COVID, our areas, probably did as much paper chasing as they do of training and recruiting. And so before a volunteer again can teach, we had to have those papers in hand. So if our staff are out and meeting with volunteers and training them, or at board meetings and can collect the paperwork in person, great. But we often know a lot of times paperwork gets shoved to the side, it gets tucked away, and everyone goes back to what they're doing. And so our staff was really left driving across their statewide territories or across their counties, making phone calls, emails, just trying to chase this paperwork. So you'd have the instances where folks might email paperwork or back in the day, fax it over, a whole host of ways they could send in paperwork. And so it just seemed like, should we not be exploring options where we can automate this process, but ultimately confirm that it's a secure electronic signature coming through, that, heaven forbid something ever happened in Junior Achievement National or one of our local areas was ever contested or in a court dispute over a volunteer's behavior. We want to know that we had the volunteer signature on file. And so this just really provided us a way to ensure that happened. So that was our use case 2 years ago, where we first started rolling areas on. And then, as everyone can imagine, now that we are socially distant, all of our programs and experiences are virtual. Volunteers are only teaching virtually. We're still collecting all of that paperwork. But now with the lack of meeting in person, with the lack of doing a drop-in by someone's office or hosting an in-person training, there is no way to collect the paperwork in person. So this has just been a really wonderful opportunity, again, for our areas. You know, pre-COVID, they could focus on building relationships, recruiting volunteers, and getting programs going, knowing that AssureSign was sending reminders and tracking who had signed. Now it's a necessity. Now we don't have that personal connection. And so again, AssureSign can do all of that background work while our areas are still, you know, maintaining relevancy with their educators and volunteers and working on the relationship part of our business.
Yeah, that's, you know, it seems like it's a fairly rudimentary and kind of part of the process, but an organization such as JA that's distributed and has the volunteers that are not even near the JA offices or the JA regions, right? Being able to have a central repository for the documents, to be able to have some governance around making sure that everything was signed and acquired from the students and the volunteers it's just got to be a huge relief to the organization to know that that's there, and that's just part of, as you might have seen it, right? We're the eSign records organization, electronic signature and records organization. So records is a big part of what we do. So when we talked to you a couple of years ago, you were probably one of the first ones on our SMS product. Tell me a little bit about, so SMS, let me kind of just talk a little bit about it first. So our eSign via text is the ability to send a signing invitation to a phone via SMS. Seems like a fairly simple, rudimentary process. What we have done that's made this even more effective is that we have built it into our product as a first-class feature. So when I say that, what I mean is it's not a bolt-on, it's not something that I go out and I do someplace else and then I just pass along a URL. We're actually building and tracking all of the information that is gathered in that signing process. The other thing that's interesting to note is TCPA, and I don't know that you were aware when we first talked to you about TCPA. Do you remember whether we did or not?
I don't. I will say that we chose your product. We chose AssureSign because certainly our business improvement team was involved in the process, and we knew you met all the requirements, right? We knew we weren't going to be going into a tool that 2 years later texts weren't going to get through, paperwork wasn't going to get through, things like that. So you're much more versed on that. So I'll let you.
Yeah. So TCPA, it's an interesting set of regulations, but it is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. It is essentially the attempt for your SMS on your phone not to become like the spam on your email. And so what the regulations around that is that if you're going to text someone for a business purpose, you need to achieve an opt-in. In fact, it's a double opt-in process. So when we're collecting information, we're asking that individual, is it okay if we send you an SMS? And I'm sure you've seen these kind of, and you do things commercially, but then there's a double opt-in. So now there's an SMS text goes out, and it essentially says, we're going to be texting you. Is that all right? The reason that's important, that seems fairly simple, but the reason that is important is that the carriers have essentially a unilateral ability to turn anybody off that they feel is violating the policy. And so by not following TCPA guidelines, you can be shut down. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be you, but it can be a noisy neighbor if the provider that you're using is sharing the same long code with someone else. So somebody else's bad behavior can affect your business, and so we didn't want that. The other thing that we did is that we submitted our process through for carrier review, and we received a short code. So the short code is that 7-digit code, you know, when you're getting your Amazon package and it tells you it's going to be delivered. It doesn't look like a regular phone number, but it looks like that short code. That short code is really important because what that does is that says to the 30-some carriers in the US that this process has been pre-vetted. So if you're using a long code, you have everything is reviewed. Things can be shut down. You can be delayed based on the backlog. With a short code, you obviously either significantly reduce or eliminate those challenges. And so that's why when we talk to our folks about TCPA, that's why it's as important as it is, and why we're excited to be able to offer that as our product. So I wanted to hear a little bit about what was your experience in the transition from a paper process to a digital electronic signature process.
Yeah, I mean, it's been seamless. I'm proud to report that over half of our network is now on AssureSign, which has been a really big deal for us. We had said since our partnership that if we could get 50% of our network on board, we would then start to build out the integration into our constituent relationship management tool, which again helps to automate and alleviate a lot of data work by our markets. You know, when you think about who JA volunteers are, they span all demographics, all generations. And so you might have a stay-at-home parent that is managing kids and running the home. And so sitting down to check email is not always feasible, but being able to, you know, sign up for their kids' JA class, get a text message, sign all the paperwork needed, and keep going about their business. Same with business professionals, right, who are going from meeting to meeting, maybe in airports, that don't have time to get to a hotel, you know, predominantly pre-COVID, but download something electronically, figure out how to get a signature on it, save it, upload it, I mean, all of that, right? And we've done a lot of research with our volunteers and the importance of onboarding them at the right moment and getting them access to the right information. And the key to the success of their onboarding is automation. So it's just been a great time for us to start to help our staff think about, you know, you don't have to touch every piece of paper, and you don't have to, you know, you can let some of these systems, these wonderful systems, do that work for you. And you run the reports and see what you're missing. And so it's just been a really seamless experience. A lot of our areas that have come on board, you know, the time savings they're seeing is significant because, like you said earlier, a lot of our areas are statewide operations, right? So they might have their, in Atlanta, JA of Georgia, right, has a hub office in Atlanta, but then district offices all throughout the state. So some staff might be driving, you know, for hours, right, to meet with their constituents. So that time savings of not having to be in a car or commuting and chasing paperwork is huge. And then our areas have said, you know, getting that, you know, automatic paperwork sign up completion done, because not only are our areas using it for that required paperwork, they're using it for sign up. They're using the static link on other systems that we offer just to automate and expedite a lot of things to get JA to the students who need it. So just the time savings, the money savings, the turnaround and getting folks up and ready to be JA volunteers, and to process financial gifts for areas that are using it for that, HR forms. It's just been a really wonderful tool for us.
Great, great. Glad to hear it. And we're super excited to be part of the JA story, personally and corporately. I did have a couple of statistics that are kind of interesting. We were talking about the SMS text, and that's the focus of our conversation today. But the open rate on SMS text is 98% versus 20% via email. And so you think about that. When you get a text, do you look at it? You hear that noise on your phone that comes. It's like, hey, somebody other than the general spamming public is requesting my attention. It's interesting too that the response time to an SMS is about 90 seconds. And this is the one thing that I didn't quite grasp, because those of us that are in the corporate world, we live by our email. But there is an entire segment of the population that either don't have an email address or don't check their email at all. And so the SMS by text allows you to tap into that population that in a way that is just not available without. And that number was something like 45% of people on their mobile phones don't have email set up. I can't understand that. That makes no sense to me. But yeah, those are some interesting statistics. And I have your slide up that shows that you had 160% more forms returned in 24 hours, and that you saw a 10 to 60 hour savings per month not having to push paper around, and that's huge when you think about those resources that you're able to deploy into other areas of your business and grow them is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think for us being a nonprofit, right, we're conscious of our money and what we're investing in, because people are investing in us. And so not only is it that time savings, but again, it's the mileage, it's the money savings of our staff having to track things down, and it saves frustration, right? Because again, if some of that paperwork holds up a program beginning, then you've got teachers frustrated, you've got students who aren't getting that visitor to come into their classroom virtually or in person. So yeah, just a lot of benefits for us all around.
Fantastic. All right, well, I think we're wrapping up here, unless there's something else you had remembered, but I want to thank you for your time this afternoon. It's been truly a pleasure speaking with you and learning about JA and learning about what we can do, especially today, in a way to be able to engage our kids and students in something that's positive, that can actually create a thought process that will be with them for the rest of their lives. And so JA is a really exciting organization. And again, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate everything that AssureSign and the AssureSign team has done for us, and being open to the innovation that our areas are mentioning with exploring ways to build out the system. It's just been a really cool process. So thank you for everything. Glad to be here.
All right, great. And so I believe, Margot,
Sure.
we're going to talk a little bit about public policy, one of the other areas that Ezra is really involved in.
Yeah, thank you, Dave and Laura, for sharing such valuable information and content. And just a reminder for those of you who are listening in, if you have any questions, you can submit them via the questions pane. And while we are waiting for questions and a little bit of back and forth, let's talk about some of the public policy initiatives that Ezra has been involved in. It's a very active group, and we've had a hand at both the state and federal level for years. Electronic will legislation, we're supporting the adoption of uniform statutes, acceptance of eSigned IRS forms. This has been an ongoing advocacy effort. In fact, Dave, I think you were part of one of the initial meetings at the IRS.
I was. I actually went to the IRS voluntarily. It was a unique... Exactly.
And the idea is to enable forms that needed to be submitted as part of transactions to have them accepted by the IRS if they're signed electronically. So we've had good success with 4506Ts in the mortgage space, and W-9s and other types of forms. Blockchain, big topic. The Ezra's participation in blockchain has really been to continue to support uniform technology neutral legislation. The Trade Association believes that eSign and the UETA are sufficient to enable blockchain transactions, and has partnered with the ULC, Uniform Law Commission, and the Chamber of Digital Commerce in trying to work with states to create uniform changes to the extent that they believe that they're necessary. E-notary really has moved beyond electronic signature use in-person environment to RON, so remote online notarization, and Ezra is supporting adoption again in a uniform way. There are, I think, 29 states now that have enacted RON legislation. Pennsylvania came on board last week. the Federal Reserve banks and the Federal Home Loan banks, again, there's been an effort to educate and advocate for the acceptance of e-notes as collateral by these institutions. Vehicle titling is also a big effort. There is a lot of auto finance transactions that are done online, but the pieces and parts of the entire auto ecosystem all need to be aligned to have it be efficient. So we've been working on that, which also includes odometer, e-odometer, ensuring reasonable federal standards for acceptance for when you sell or trade in your car. David, you want to add any more on public policy? You've been such an active member of ESRA over the years, and feel free to chime in on some of the efforts.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit the major ones. I know from the IRS, the 8878s and 8879s that we're able to now electronically sign for tax returns. 4506T, I just refinanced my house 2 weeks ago and electronically signed a 4506T. So I was like, hey, all right, there we go. But that's an income verification form with the IRS. And so, it's the government, the pandemic is forcing both business and government to rethink how they're interacting with their customers or constituents. And I think from that perspective, we're going to see some movement, some significant movement in a way that's going to make our lives easier. I know, it's an interesting time, not something that we would have chosen, but it is forcing us to reconsider the way we do business. And so, ESRA has always been on the forefront of that.
Yeah, that's great. I thought that the time and money saved, it's so great to be able to actually see statistics, because for years, I mean, we've been talking about going digital 20 years now, maybe more, and everybody would ask, well, what's the ROI? And it was hard to capture, early on. People weren't measuring it. They understood that it would be faster, better, cheaper, but there weren't enough transactions that were being done digitally to be able to actually measure. So it's really quite exciting to see those numbers in terms of more applications and hours saved, dollars saved. So it's great.
Yeah, and to that point, when you talk about, when people ask for ROI and it isn't in their mind, that it isn't readily apparent, what they are looking for is that first level ROI. Like what am I going to save versus handling this paper manually the first time that it comes in? But what they don't think about is the second, third, fourth level savings of having it built into a system, as Laura was saying that they're doing today, where you can build in electronic workflow, that you can ensure that an account, that a relationship is in good order from a form standpoint. That if there's a question, you don't have to go to a file room and walk through a bunch of file cabinets to thumb through to hope that the paper that you want to get is there and is signed in a way that will support your position. All of those things, as third, fourth, fifth level of ROI, all are something that it's really hard to quantify. And so, to your point, we're now at a point in our business cycle, in our engagement with electronic signatures and records, that those things are becoming tangible, and they're, in some ways, we're thinking like, how would we have done this before? I don't understand. Especially think of everybody working from their home office. So you're supposed to drive in and put something in a file cabinet for somebody else to get out at a later time. It just doesn't make sense. But that's where we were 10 years ago. And so it's interesting to see how far we've come.
Laura, did you have any further comments on that?
No, I think that is an interesting way to look at it. I mean, I think even at the national level, in our Colorado Springs building, we still had probably 80 staff on site and about 20 of us remote. And so now those that are now home due to the pandemic have been, kind of forced to figure this remote world out that some of us have been doing for quite some time now. And so it is to have everyone caught up and just doing things like this. It's like, why haven't we? And, for our areas, I mean, that cost saving, the time saving is huge because many of our areas are wearing multiple hats. Some markets are large, right? Chicago, Atlanta, New York, they have huge staff, but then some are 2-3 people teams. So just that time saving and the return on paperwork and just getting things going is really important to us. So that makes sense.
That's great. And I also thought the statistics, the SMS effectiveness was just fascinating. The open rate and the response time rate. Are you doing that on different types of products? Do you have it like across the board, or are there some that are faster, some that are slower? Maybe financial transactions versus another type of transaction where the rate may be different?
So what we find is that about 50% of our customers are deploying the SMS notifications just as part of their standard business. They've just found that it works better. The statistics that we see around that, the average response rate of somebody who's in an SMS, and this isn't specifically, you're looking at how you interact. So we find that you can either, in our process, you can either respond in email or you can respond in the SMS environment. So you don't have to pick one or the other. But email average response rates are about 60%, or I'm sorry, 6%. And so when you look at that, SMS response rates, not just open rates. The open rates are the 98%, but the response rates are 45%. And what we find is that ours are significantly higher than that because it's something that you're expecting.
Yeah, it's great. So I'm going to turn it, Mallory. You have the questions. You have more questions coming in. So I'll turn to you for a moment.
Yeah, we did have a couple of questions, and I kind of feel like they may have been answered in the last little bit of conversation, but I'm going to go ahead and address them. How has eSign via text changed AssureSign customers?
Yeah, so that it has. There are obviously certain industries, certain demographics that the industries target that are either younger or maybe not as tethered to email as I am, and probably everybody on this call. So it makes a big impact from those industries, but it also cuts down on the lag time that you would normally see from an email invitation.
Great. And then this next one is for Laura. For people/companies who are not leveraging e-signature via AssureSign, what would you tell them?
Don't even question it. I mean, just go for it. There's always a learning curve, right? I think with new technology and tools, but I think in today's world, that's all we know is just every day figuring out a new system to join, a new platform to use. And so it's just been a no-brainer for us. Again, we're a financially conscious organization, especially our local markets, and to see this year that our accounts have doubled, and that really after our sign-up period kind of closed, people were still coming out. They just get it. And I think once we've built this network now where our local area staff can encourage other staff and actually train other staff on tips and tricks and what they've done, it's just taken on a kind of a life of its own. And so I would just say, don't wait. It's something you should absolutely be considering and doing.
All right, great. Well, thank you both so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Margot for closing statements.
Okay, very good. So thank you again, Dave and Laura. It was great. We have a lot more content coming up in the Digital 2020 Education Series. You can find out more about Ezra, how to join on the Ezra website, www.esignrecords.org. On behalf of Ezra and our speakers, thank you very much for joining us today.